And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection, your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Sipsian people. Food labels provide information you can use to make informed choices about foods and drinks at the grocery store and at home. Food labels can help you compare and choose products more easily and know what ingredients a food product contains. On today's Open Connection, we bring you the third and final part on how to eat for hormone health by Dr. Patricia Mills.
But keep them moderate, right? About 20% of your diet. They're really great for stir frying, for baking, roasting, those kinds of things. So as long as you're using the real stuff, if it says a vegetable oil spread at Whole Foods and it's $20, I don't even know why they sell that stuff. It's totally toxic. You do not want to eat. It's very high in omega-6 and very ultra processed. Just because it says plants on it does not mean it's good for you. You have to develop the faculty of discrimination and being super savvy about labels. Even if it says multigrain and baked and whole wheat and whatever, you need to make sure you're getting the right kind. And for your minerals, vitamins, and phytonutrients, all of those things can be had from your vegetables. And they've actually studied how much vegetable you need to eat a day in women to get an anti-inflammatory effect. And that's 8 to 10 servings of vegetables and fruits a day. Now, doing the math, if your body can break down 2 to 3 servings of fruits without too much issues with blood sugar, that leaves about 6 to 8 servings of vegetables a day that you need to eat. How do we hit that target? Because it sounds kind of crazy. The way you hit it is that you introduce vegetables to every meal, including breakfast and lunch. We're pretty good at dinner. Every time I talk to patients, they're like, oh, I have a great dinner, right? I'm like, can you just have dinner for breakfast and lunch? But maybe switch it up. Maybe for breakfast, you have a sourdough bread instead of rice. Maybe for lunch, you have quinoa instead of pasta, right? As long as you switch your carbs, keep them in good amounts, which I'll teach you, and you start the meal with your vegetables. And in order to get that 6 to 8 servings without giving yourself digestive distress, you have to cook about 80% of them. So if you're eating a lot of raw vegetables because you think you're getting more nutrients as a result, you're partially right. Our body has now developed over time to eat cooked foods since we used fire for cooking starting about 800,000 years ago. Our digestive tract got shorter compared to apes, which have very large, barreled chests because they have very long digestive tracts. So if you cook your vegetables, they actually shrink down, they become smaller portions, and you eat them, and guess what you put on your vegetables? Olive oil or some kind of oil with vinegar and natural salt to taste. So now you're hitting your oils, right? Your healthy fats. You're getting your vinegar before your carbohydrates, your high starch meal. You're getting your vegetable fiber and your phytonutrients all in one go. And then you eat your pasta, your carbs, your bannock, whatever it is that you want to have, with your protein, whatever protein that you choose. That is the way to build a meal that will result in a balanced hormone response to that meal. Okay? Other minerals, vitamins, and phytonutrients are iodine in seaweed, bone and vegetable broths for minerals and other nutrients. And so I always add dried seaweed to my broths or to the cooking water for my rice. Any kind of seaweed, you can, arami, wakame, kelp, dulse, whatever you want, just add it to your cooking waters. You will get enough iodine if you do that. So here's a practical application. This is one of the last slides. So this is my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And this is how I eat a ton of food right now without gaining weight. Half of my plate has cooked more than raw vegetables with oil, vinegar, and natural salt. I have a palm-sized serving of protein and a palm-sized serving of healthy carb. And I might heat or cook my food in bone broth or vegetable broth for extra nutrition. Okay? Snacks are hummus, guacamole, veggies, fruits, nuts, seeds, seaweed snacks, etc. Partner your carbs with fiber and fat. It's better to eat an apple with nuts. And hummus with carrots, for example. So those are the 4 key factors I wanted to cover.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. There are many family stories and baker origins of sourdough starters, but only a few have enough data to back up their claims. Some examples include a starter from Komura Bakery in Japan that is used to make a-pan bread since 1870s, and a starter from Borden Bakery in San Francisco, California that dates back to 1849. Let's return to the conversation as Dr. Merrill shares why sourdough bread is different than other breads.
And one thing I wanted to say is people always ask me, so how can I eat bread? Here's what's really cool about traditionally cooked breads, which are traditionally sourdough fermented breads, is that when you ferment flour, the sugar content in the flour goes down. And so it intrinsically becomes a lower sugar content food. When you buy the bread off of the shelf that hasn't been fermented, even if it's multigrain and all those things, unless it's rye, like a really good quality rye bread, it'll cause your blood sugar to go up. But even if you do that switch to sourdough, even so, you still have to start the meal with vegetables. And I can tell you that changing up my breakfast has been the best thing that I've done for myself. It's hard to explain the benefits. You kind of have to try it for yourself. But it's the hardest thing to do, and yet it's the most impactful, is to change your breakfast so that it's kind of like you're eating dinner for breakfast. And you may have to play around with that. I used to eat a big bowl of oats for breakfast, thinking it was amazing for my health. But my blood sugar response was clearly heading me in the direction of pre-diabetes, diabetes once I started measuring it. So now I start my breakfast with vegetables. If I want, I'll have a palm-sized serving of oats, maybe a slice of sourdough bread. I top it with olive oil because I can't do butter. I have a sensitivity to butter, otherwise it'd be a great food as well. And I'll have a fish for omega-3s, like a canned salmon or sardines or anchovies or herring or mackerel. Maybe leftover lamb from the night before, or maybe I'll have some edamame or tofu, that kind of stuff. That is how you can eat for hormone health, just on a practical level. So I want to take some questions now, because I'm sure there's a lot.
Yeah, you got 10 minutes over there on the timer, so she's got 10 minutes for questions. I started eating cooked vegetables about 3 weeks ago for breakfast, and I feel amazing. And I do have type 1 diabetes. And it's made a real difference with my insulin because I've got continuous glucose monitoring. So I'm seeing everything. So it's so amazing. I just highly recommend it. The other thing is you were talking about vinegar. Can you use lemon juice? Does it have the same effect on your vegetables?
So lemon juice has amazing nutrients in it, but it doesn't have the same effect. It looks like it's the acetic acid from white vinegar, rice vinegar, red vinegar, and balsamic vinegar, as long as it doesn't have added sugar. And the lemon juice is an amazing thing to add in because it's so healthful, but the sugar effect isn't the same. Yeah, good question.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Super informative. So what advice would you give to somebody who has cancer and obviously can't turn back the time and change ways of eating, but what are some healthy habits, I guess, that I could incorporate to support my body with what's going on?
So first of all, lots of love to you. Everything I just talked about will reduce inflammation in the body, which will have two effects, okay? Number one, it'll decrease the root cause of your current cancer, which then subsequently will make it less likely that you will get the cancer again or get it growing or get it spreading, right? Because it's the inflammation that really contributes to cancer formation and growth. So all of these things are still helpful. It's never too late. You will not be able to turn back the time, but you will be able to turn down the dial and maybe even reverse it, if not reduce it. So these things, like, there's a lot of things you can do, but for the sake of not overwhelming you, I would say to focus on these things first. And then when you have more space in your life and you've really nailed these things down, it's focusing on other things that support your gut health, like prioritizing sleep, reducing inflammation, and engaging in the right kind of exercise.
My question to you is, I've recently started focusing on my physical health and working out, and I was working with a trainer who actually works with different blood types, and he was talking about proteins, and I know you mentioned different amounts of protein, and so how does that, trying to form the question here, it just made sense what he said to me. My blood type doesn't need a whole lot of protein, like bare minimum, because it would take me a long time to digest it. And quite some time ago, about a decade ago, I was taking this program which eliminated all the protein, most of the protein. Like I was getting it through vegetables, like or plant-based protein. And so I'm not even sure what my question is.
I think I get the essence of it.
Yeah,
so,
are you familiar with blood type?
Yes. Yes, so I can speak to that.
Thank you.
First of all, you can get protein from plants. I recommend getting it from real plants and not protein powder. There's some issues with that, which I won't get into, but there's some other gut-related, hormone-related issues. So you can hit your targets with plant foods in terms of protein, as long as you're very strategic and you're counting and you're aware, at least at first. Secondly, the blood type is related to the kind of protein you have on your red blood cells. So it's a protein signature on your red blood cell. And I've looked into this superficially, not deeply, but as far as I know right now, is that there's no link between the signature protein on your blood cells and your digestive system. And how your digestive system deals with protein. But I will say that there are variations between people of how well people do on plant versus animal protein. And that's a journey that every person has to undertake, is to discover, do I do better with some animal protein in my life? Or actually, do I do better without it and focus more on plants? Some people actually do better with more animal, less plants, and vice versa. So I think there is a body wisdom to be had where you discover for yourself. But the explanation of it being related to your blood type isn't the right link. But the essence of there being different people who do better with plants versus animal protein is correct.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. The smell of fresh bread is often described as pleasant, appetizing, and a comforting aroma that can invoke feelings of warmth and home. The smell of bread comes from over 540 volatile compounds in a loaf of bread, but only about 20 of them contribute to the bread's aroma. Let us return to the conversation as Dr. Mills takes some questions from the audience.
Thank you for the presentation. I just have a question. My husband's in remission of bladder cancer, and I've been having a hard time finding the proper meals for him because he suffers from a lot of inflammation in his stomach. And another question, I do make my own bread. Is that like a part of his inflammation too?
So what I have to say about that is I'm going to answer your second question first. So bread that is homemade doesn't have the additives and the added sugars that you would find in the store. So I think homemade bread in that way is infinitely better than any store-bought bread. If you're doing sourdough bread, that's another level up. Like level 101 is making your own bread, level 202 is sourdough, right? If he's eating a lot of bread without the buffering effects of the vegetables, for example, and the healthy fats and the right kind of meat, or protein, then it could lead to inflammation. So it's not that the bread is leading to inflammation, but the bread on its own could be causing inflammation. Does that make sense? Because it doesn't have the buffers with it. So if I eat a slice of bread and I measure my blood sugar, it will spike. But if I eat vegetables or some kind of, usually it's the vegetable fiber with the healthy olive oil and the vinegar to season it. Your homemade dressings is all infinitely better than anything you can buy in the store because they have a lot of vegetable seed oils. then you will not get that blood sugar response. It'll be nice and even. And that bread then delivers the sugars that you need without the massive spike. And then it turns non-inflammatory. So I'd continue to make the bread with love and add foods in to that meal. Usually, if you're going to eat a sandwich, for example, or bread for breakfast, having that cooked vegetable or even a plate of salad or something like that would be helpful. Does that make sense? And the protein and the fats. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what your timer says. How many more questions you got?
4 minutes and 20 seconds.
So maybe one more and then that's it after this. Yeah. Okay. So 2 more.
Yeah.
My question is about the hormone tests that exist. And for someone who's feeling the symptoms we talked about in the beginning, would you recommend a hormone test or following the 4 steps you've talked about? It could get pricey and tempting, all these gene tests and hormone tests and blood tests.
Totally.
What would be your advice?
So I actually developed the bioidentical hormone replacement therapy training program for nurse practitioners in a company that provides that service. I'm very familiar with the blood tests and the prescriptions. What I have to say is that the blood tests are not accurate and reliable other than for extremes because your blood levels change day to day. And depending on when you get your blood work done, it could be normal, it could be low, it could be high. So in my opinion, it's not necessary. And in fact, in my food as medicine group, like medical covered program, we don't test that. We do this plus more, 8 weeks, an hour and a half each week. And this to me is foundational. So in my opinion, you do this first. And once you have this all locked and loaded and you're really good at it, you really got it figured out, if there's still residual problems left, then you partner with somebody who can test the hormones at the right time, in the right way. And if you do that, you actually should have it covered by MSP. You do not need the Dutch urine test, the Dutch test, okay? You do not need saliva tests. A blood test will do, but you need to have a trained professional who knows how to order them and read them for you. And that's not going to be a gynecologist trained in our Western medicine culture. Do you see what I'm saying? And once you've done this, you're probably not going to need it. But if you do, then at least you know your money is being well spent with someone who has additional training, like a naturopathic doctor, functional medicine doctor, or Science in Humans is the online Canadian company that I work for. And they have nurse practitioners who do it at a fraction of the cost. I have no financial relations with them, but I support them because I think women need better access to that kind of testing. But women go too quickly to the testing. First, work on your foundational health, then invest in the testing should you need it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
The order in which you eat your food is known as food sequencing, can impact your blood sugar levels and make you feel fuller. Some recommend eating vegetables first, then protein and healthy fats, and finishing with carbohydrates. In this final segment of Open Connection, Dr. Mills tackles the question of spaghetti and meatballs.
My question is just about the food combining. So when you say eat your proteins and vegetables before your starch, like most of us have pasta with a meat sauce or a vegetable and meat sauce. Most of us have a sandwich with vegetables on it. So are you saying eat all of that before you eat your starch, or is it okay to eat it combined?
So first of all, the reason that may or may not work to eat it together is that a half a plate of vegetables is impossible to get into a sandwich. So typically vegetables added to your sandwich is not going to be enough, right? And in Italy, if you go to Italy, has anyone ever had antipasti? So good, right? Cured hams and meats and olive oils and vegetables, they have it before their meal, and then they have their vegetables, and then they have their pasta and their meat. So it's so interesting how they do that in a very specific way. I think it's okay to combine it, but you have to make sure you're hitting your vegetables. So I see women doing this where they'll have like a plate of pasta and a little bit of vegetables and tomato sauce. That's not enough. You need a plate of vegetables with a little bit of pasta and you have your tomatoes, it's kind of the opposite. Or I'll see women eating like rice and beans, and they'll have this massive plate of quinoa and whatever, and rice and whatever. Your rice and beans and your quinoa, they should all equal the size of your palm, and then the rest is the vegetables. So our balance is off. And if you cook vegetables and you do it, so the way I make a dressing is I put in a cup, I put 3/4 of my oil of choice, 1/4 of vinegar, and about a teaspoon of salt, and you mix that up, drizzle that on your vegetables that you're eating. It's super tasty. My kids eat that. And their favorite condiment is mustard, which is mustard seeds, turmeric, and vinegar. It's a great condiment. So the answer is you just have to make sure you hit your targets, and you can mix it, but it's the quantity that matters as well. Yeah, exactly. So roasted, sautés, blanched, steamed. I basically buy vegetables, and that day I decide how I'm going to cook them, and I make my dressing. After I cook them, I add them, and that's it. So you just have to do more chopping. Basically, it's a lot of chopping. We just put in, listen to a podcast, watch something, listen to good music. It becomes part of your habit, and make enough at dinner to eat for breakfast. That's how you get around the busy mornings and when you have kids and that kind of thing. So I just reheat my food in the morning from the night before. It works like a charm. If you go to YouTube and you just search for Dr. Patricia Mills, MD, my YouTube video will come up. If you've never been to that channel before, the main video is the video that talks about this. If you're revisiting it again, you just want to Google the search bar, Eat for Hormone Health. That's the title. And if you have a medical condition or a condition you're particularly interested in, go to the search bar and type in that condition. Chances are I've talked about it at some point in time. And if not, email me and I'll add it to my list. I release a new episode. It's called The Wild Wisdom Show every week.
While fasting can be extremely beneficial for boosting your metabolism and improving your body weight, if done the wrong way, it can actually ruin your hormone health. And specifically, it will cause your cortisol stress hormone to go up to the point where you could develop hypertension and increase your risk of dying from cardiovascular, heart attack, and stroke disease by up to 21%, and increase your risk of dying from any cause by 32%. So the mistake that you do not want to make is to break your fast too late in the day. So when a lot of people start fasting, they skip their breakfast and they'll break their fast with their first meal around noon, for example. And what that does is that in the morning, if you wait too long to break your fast, is your cortisol stress hormone starts to go up too high. In the short term, that can give you a burst of energy and you can feel very energetic from fasting, but in the long term, it will result in those negative health benefits. So what you want to do instead, shift your eating window, the time that you are eating, earlier. Break your fast before 10 o'clock in the morning. That seems to be a kind of golden opportunity zone for eating without increasing your cortisol levels. And then end your eating window earlier so that you're fasting, for example, from 6 o'clock until 10 o'clock the next day. You're not eating, but then you're eating between that 10 o'clock and 6-hour eating window. That gives you about an 8-hour eating window and a 16-hour fast. So you can play around with those different kinds of fasts that are out there, but making sure that you always break your fast before 10 a.m. to protect your hormone health.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.